On time, so we can start. So firstly, thanks for all for joining in and giving the time for this webinar, and welcome to this webinar. And before I get into the integrities of the webinar and things like that, let me just go ahead and give you certain background about what Metionic is all about, and then we can actually drill down a bit more into the topic of the webinar, and definitely I'll hand it over to the speaker of the day, Ayush. So just to start off, Metionic, we are an 18 years old company, and we are in the field of IT consulting. I would precisely say IT consulting in the space of software tools. And we till now had been successful in delivering our solutions across 300 plus companies. And we have been actually been able to make our clients deliver their software with quality on time. And our main goal and aim throughout our things have been to empower the entire software fraternity to develop that particular softwares, whichever field they are into, no matter it's a mission critical, non-mission critical, finance, non-finance, or things like that, in an appropriate manner, in a most economical manner, and most quality oriented manner. So that's what our goal is, and that's what we stands for. And we will be actually continuing this particular journey, and today's webinar is in tune to that. Okay, getting into the topic of the day today. So in terms of the application security landscape, right, we have seen that the major challenge has been two fronts. One is definitely, if we are getting into the security landscape, the costing of the entire application development was very high. That's one. And secondly, if this particular thing is basically not tamed in the correct manner, the entire application release dates is being pushed and pushed. So we will try to delve this particular thing in a shift left scenario, where our solutions or the things will actually come in play. And Ayush, the speaker of the day today, will be actually helping us to actually learn more about how to actually expertise in doing that, right? To just mention about Ayush. So Ayush has been the founder of the company called Odasix. And Odasix is a company which has helped a lot many companies in terms of their application software testing. And it has been actually one of the very known product now in the market to ensure that this application security posture can be embedded in the development cycle itself, rather than being pushed to a kind of a later on kind of a stage in the security stage. And he actually has been in this particular management consulting domain from a long time. He has actually been a part of Ernst & Young, DC Strategy. He has been a part of health insurance and things like that before he has actually started of his own company called Odasix. And he is very much known in this industry for the kind of ways he can actually break down complex architecture into simpler parts and then take it forward to actually deliver this particular kind of infrastructural security. In other side of on the lighter side, Ayush is a very sports-oriented person. So he has actually been always keen on sports, and you can always find Ayush in some of the stadiums where India is playing. Maybe I'm not sure why Ayush is not in US as of being a part of the IPL. He should have been. And he has also have keen interests in some other things like photography. And he has been actually a very active person in Instagram, having a lot many followers. And he has a kind of keen interest in food also. He's been keen on that. So even it is very interesting to note that whenever he visits somewhere with his family, he makes sure that the restaurant booking is done before even he books his hotel as such for the stay. So these are some of the interesting faces of Ayush. And this is something which also tries to pull in the kind of products he has actually come in from Odasic's part. So Odasic essentially has two products, CyberChief and QSIM. And these particular two products are built to actually empower the entire development team so that they get more time to relax rather than keeping and driving more into this particular nitty-gritties of software security. So if you want to elevate your application security to a place where you need not to spend too much of time and things like that on that, or hire expensive resources to actually implement a particular kind of security posture, then this is the place, and this is the place where we can actually help you on doing that. Thank you, Ayush, for being a part of this particular webinar today, and I hand it over to Ayush. Ayush, all over to you.
Thank you, Anirban. And the reason I'm not in America is because T20 is a kid's game, no? Like I'm a purist. I focus on the test matches and
okay,
and the one days. Anyway, good to be in front of you. Good to be with you all. Let me start off by just giving you a bit of an insight as to why I'm in this position, right? So a few years ago, we were doing application security work for our clients. Now, you may know this as traditional pen testing, right? You get a VAPT report from your vendor. We were giving those reports to our client. Now, some of our clients were doing it twice a year, some were doing it quarterly. And at one point, I happened to be looking through the reports of one particular customer, the last 4 or 5 pen test reports, and I realized something. The same vulnerabilities were coming back over and over again. There were a couple of new ones from time to time, but most of them were just reoccurring over and over again. So I went through the pen test reports of many of our clients, and I was actually shocked because this situation was consistent across pretty much every single one of them. My first thought was, what are we doing wrong? And what is my team doing to cause this situation? But what I actually found was that this was not really a fault of testing, but it was a consequence of modern software development workflows. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, think of your own software. Your teams are shipping new features, they're shipping new patches on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day. So if you get a pen test done, a report is handed to you. By the time your developers have fixed those reports, let's say, a month later or 2 months later, that report is out of date. Those vulnerabilities are well out of date. Because in the time that your teams have actually patched your software, you've released anywhere from 20 to 150 times. And that means that new vulnerabilities have been brought into your system or old ones have come back. Now, effectively, if you're following this cycle of an annual pen test or even a 6-monthly pen test, in 2024, you're literally flushing money down the drain. The obvious solution when I realized this was to do more security work during my software development during the software development workflow, right? But the problem is, when I looked at the tools that were available at the time in order to make this happen, those tools didn't really cut it. They didn't really have the user-friendliness, the ease of use that was needed in order to put security into your SDLC. In fact, I gave some of those tools to my developers, and they literally just laughed at me. They said, we can't use these. This is way too difficult. So instead of spending money on training and trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, right? I wasn't prepared to subject my devs to all of that. And that's why we built CyberChief, and we built the solution around CyberChief, because it's designed to give software teams the power to find and fix security issues right from the SDLC without having to rely on security experts all the time. Now, we're not against security experts, and I'll tell you how the whole system will work for you. But this whole system that I'm describing to you in this webinar is what we call security built in, not bolted on. All right? So let's start with the size of the problem, because I'm guessing one of the things that took your attention when you found out about this webinar was how to do application security cost effectively. Now, these numbers will vary from company to company, but the number that I'm showing you here is for a small to growing team, right? I'll break down these numbers for you a bit later on, but just keep in mind that these numbers that you're looking at, they're not, they're direct costs. They don't include any licensing costs. They don't include any penalties or fines. They don't include any subscription costs.
Ayush, we are not seeing any slide. Are you showing something?
I am showing something. Give me 1 second. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for pointing it out. So these numbers are direct costs of running a security practice, no licensing costs, no penalties or fines, and no subscription costs, right? If you are a small team growing, this is what you're up for. If you want to do application security properly in the traditional way, right? Now, the problem with this is if you do application security the traditional way, the way it's been done for the last 2 or 3 decades, then a number of different questions will pop up in your head, right? The questions are somewhat about protecting yourself, somewhat about what reputation you're putting out into the world, and a lot about your peace of mind, right? Now, we often hear from our customers before they join us that peace of mind is a big issue because they're constantly thinking that something is wrong with security and they need to do something about it rather than wasting their headspace thinking about something which otherwise they may not be able to fix. So let's take one of these brain fog questions. The top one here, I don't know what my security posture is. All right. If you can, in the chat box, just enter for me what you think security posture means. We hear this term a lot, and I'm not convinced that everyone is on the same page with this. So just do me a favor, in the chat box, just enter what security posture means, and we'll go over some of your answers in a bit. Now, if you want to know what security posture means to our customers, CyberChief users, I'll give you an example. So security posture means being able to point to some data, point to a dashboard, and to say, look, right now, we're at 3 stars out of 7 in terms of our security posture. And in 6 months, we're aiming to get to 5 stars. Because if we get to 5 stars, we know that we're in the top 9 to 10% of software teams out there who take security seriously. Knowing your security posture means being able to point to your vulnerability trajectory and say, look, it was high, it's going down, it's now stabilized, but we're working on making it even lower, right? Security posture means being able to point to the parts of your application and saying within your team and even reporting to management that, look, we know exactly where our vulnerabilities are coming from, and we have some plans in place to fix them. That's what security posture means to our customers. Think about whether you have the facility to do this in your own company. Can you point to a dashboard? Can you produce a report at will? Or do you need to call up someone and go, what's my security posture? So what's happening is this brain fog that I keep talking about is resulting from the traditional way that AppSec is done, right? So you have a number of releases, and then every 6 months or 12 months, you might call your VAPT vendor and say, I need a report. Please tell me what's wrong. Then you spend a few weeks, if not a few months, patching these vulnerabilities. Your dev team is busy. They're not spending their time producing new features. You fall behind on your feature backlog. You get more pressure to work harder and faster. And then you start wondering, I'm already under so much pressure. I can't work even harder. I can't work even faster. So this security thing is just a pain in my backside. How can I possibly do this more often than this? right? And it's a very valid question. And I'll explain to you the antidote to this. I'll explain to you the solution to this. But maybe if you can in the chat box, do me a favor, write down two things: how many developers your company has and how many application security experts your company has. You can give me a ratio if you want, because it's this ratio which will help you work out whether your application security practice is adequate or whether you actually need to adopt something else, something like shifting left, in order to make it world-class. Now, while you think of that, let me, or while you put that into the chat box, let me break down that earlier number that I showed you. Remember that big number, 60 to 75 lakhs? Here are my assumptions for this. So what we say is that you need approximately one application security expert on your team for every 10 to 15 developers, right? That means if you have a small to medium-sized team of developers of roughly 45 to 50, then you need at least 3 AppSec experts. Now, if you get them cheap, you might be spending 60 lakhs on them. If you get them at market rates, you're probably spending closer to 75 lakhs. So these numbers, they're not just plucked out of thin air. They're actually relevant numbers based on what you might be spending in the market already, and definitely what some of our customers were spending before they came to us. All right. So Anirban, let's put up that first quiz.
Yeah.
And
Pooja, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. Yeah, Pooja, can you just bring the poll question, please?
Here's the question that I'd like you to answer. How would your developers describe your current AppSec posture?
Okay, so these are the options that you have. Excellent, impeccable, 100% hack-proof, hanging on by the thread.
Yep, let's give people 30 seconds just to put in their answers.
Okay, we see the last one having a lot of weightage. Okay, we have some excellent one. Okay, good to see that.
Interesting.
No one for the impeccable one. Okay.
No one's impeccable. All right. Pretty much done.
Okay, so everyone agrees that I think majority agrees that it is hanging on by the thread.
Hanging on by a thread. Okay, great, great. I'm glad we have a group of realists in this webinar. It's great to see.
Good.
Yeah. So brilliant. 62% hanging on by a thread. Great. And look, what I'm about to show you really backs up that sentiment. Okay, because as part of the work that we do in order to understand our customers, we're also talking to developers on a daily basis, people on the ground, because often what we find is that when we talk to decision makers, they have a view about their security posture, but it's not always the right view. And so what we do is we talk to developers to understand what are the constraints, what are the challenges they're facing, and how can our solution work better in order to support them to shift left and to run security tests from the SDLC rather than relying on some security team, either in-house or external, right? Now, you may not have had these exact conversations with your developers. You may have answered that poll question based on your perception of what they think, but these are actual conversations that we're having with people. And if you're interested, reach out to Anirban or our team, my team later, and we can give you a really interesting set of questions to use at your next stand-up that you can use to get some more information about what your developers are actually thinking, right? The interesting thing for me was when we did our research, there was very little difference between the responses from developers in sensitive industries versus developers in what we would call non-sensitive industries. So developers in, for example, fintech or banking and finance, right? Insurance. In fact, some of these answers are from developers in those industries, right? Healthcare is another one. And I think instead of looking at this as a way to go, we're doing so badly, we're so horrible, blah, blah, blah. This is a way to go, look, clearly everyone agrees there's a problem here. So what can we do about it? Right? And you may obviously know, many of you obviously already know what your team or what your own team thinks about your security posture. Some of you may not be ready to take action. And unfortunately, I can't help you if you're not ready to take action. But if you are ready to move on, and if you are ready to do something about it and take the first step, you're going to love what's coming up. So here's the idea. Now, you've heard about shifting left before, right? But what does it actually mean? Right? Shifting left, from my point of view, is about making sure that you're doing security work and also QA work, but things that were traditionally left to the end of the month or the end of the week or end of the year, you're doing those activities right while your code is being developed, while your new features are being developed, while your bugs are being patched, right? You're not leaving it until the end of the quarter, but you're doing it simultaneously. You're doing it all at once. Now, when you hear this, when you hear these frameworks and these concepts, it's very easy and understandable to think, oh my God, we're already so busy. How can we do more, right? I don't have endless budget. I don't have budget for security. I don't have budget to hire more devs. How can I ask them to do more? But let me change your mindset about this. Think about a robot vacuum cleaner, right? Now, at the moment, your house might be getting cleaned daily, right? You might be doing it yourself. You might have some home help, or it might be getting cleaned weekly. Again, you might be doing it yourself. You might have some home help, right? That is very similar to the traditional approach with application security, where it happens at certain points in time and only those points in time. On the flip side, if you have a robot vacuum cleaner, your house could be getting cleaned every hour. Your house would be a lot cleaner for a lot longer, and you would not be doing any extra work. I hope that makes sense, right? You're doing more cleaning, but less work. And that's precisely what Shift Left offers you. More security, more QA, but less manual labor. So if you came into this thinking, he's going to tell me I need to do more security work, I am telling you that, but I'm telling you, you can do it without burdening your devs any further. Now, the next question obviously is, well, how can I shift left? And I'm only going to suggest to you two things to look at in today's webinar. Both of these things are our frameworks that we've developed over time that we have put in place ourselves first because we need to practice what we preach. So all of these things we put in place ourselves, and we help our customers put in place as and when they are ready. The first framework I want to talk to you about is what we call the modern AppSec framework. It's the MAP. Okay. Now, there are 5 principles to this. The first couple of principles can be done quite easily, right? You can take the first 2 steps quite easily. The best thing about the map is that you don't need to do everything all at once, and you can have a phased approach, which means your team can learn along the way. You can experiment to see what works and what doesn't work and adapt after that. Now, integrated and autonomous, what does that mean? What we're saying is that whatever security you're running, whatever security testing you're running needs to be part of your software development workflows, and it needs to run without someone needing to click a button or needing to monitor a tool, which means you should not have to hire someone just to run a tool for you. If you have to do that, it's not autonomous, even though it might be integrated. All right. And that's one of the common questions I get when we're doing demos of CyberChief. It's like, oh, okay, so how many people do I need to run this? Well, the answer is 0, because you should be spending that money somewhere else. The principles 3 and 4 and that you're seeing there are more advanced principles where, you know, when you start running more security tests, your developers will naturally have more questions about how to patch vulnerabilities, how certain things work, how not to do certain things, and how not to patch certain vulnerabilities. And that's why you need to provide them support. You need to have security champions within your team who make it a point to promote security work and make sure it's being done on a regular basis, make sure it's becoming a culture within your team, right? And obviously, if you're doing all these things, then principle number 5 there becomes a lot more useful to you, which is your manual pen test, which you might still get done once or twice a year, right? So here's an important concept for you to grasp. If you're doing automated security work by shifting left, then you're patching a lot of the vulnerabilities a lot sooner. And when you come around to a 6-monthly or annual manual penetration test on your applications and APIs, then that pen tester can spend a lot more time trying to find workflow-related vulnerabilities, business logic-related vulnerabilities, which they might otherwise have missed because they were focusing on the more trivial stuff. So there are step change benefits to automating and then combining it with your manual VAPTs at certain points. The second framework that I want you to understand is what we call our 5 fists. Now, the map was a set of principles. The 5 fists are a set of tools, okay? If you're familiar with the term DevSecOps, shifting left and DevSecOps go sort of hand in hand, right? In fact, often they're used interchangeably. So, in fact, do me a favor and write down for yourself, of these 5 tools, 5 types of tools, which ones do you already have? I'm guessing some people will have a WAF, right? And then you may have one of the other 4, right? But in order to shift left properly in a more sustainable and consistent way, in order to really take that pressure off your development team, and in order to stay on top of your feature backlog so that it's not blowing out, so that your releases aren't being delayed, the ideal setup is to have all 5 tools. And if you do, when you do integrate all 5 tools into your SDLC, you end up with a situation like this. Now, this may seem scary at first. I get it, right? But let me explain this to you. What I'm showing you here is that you have a release, let's say every 2 weeks, every fortnight you have a sprint, and you're doing 5 activities around it. You're doing a static scan of your code base, which is what you might commonly have referred to as a vulnerability scan. The most common tool for this is SonarQube, right? Not the greatest tool. Our friends at Medionic have better tools that you can use, but it's an option. You're doing your cloud security posture management, right? CSPM, which means you're locking down your AWS, your GCP, your Azure environments. You're doing web app scanning, so gray box web app scanning, where a tool is logging into your application and testing behind the login. And you're doing all of these things, right? 5 of these things are being done automatically. No one is lifting a finger. The only thing your dev team has to do is act on the results. Effectively, it's no different to them fixing any bugs which are found, any functional bugs which are found before a new release goes live. And this is the beauty of shifting left, in the manner that I'm explaining it to you, right? So when you do this, you're doing little bits of security work. See these red lines here. You're doing little pieces of security work, little security fixes all the time, right? When I say little, I mean you're spending little amounts of time on it. And so when it comes to a manual pen test, whether you do it monthly, quarterly, annually, instead of spending 2-3 months patching vulnerabilities, you're only spending a few days. And this is the real beauty of automating your application security, your API security, your cloud security. This is the real beauty of shifting left, because at the end of the day, your devs actually save a lot more time as opposed to if you were just doing AppSec or VAPT once a year or twice a year. Now, because your devs are already very used to building Docker images or building Docker images automatically, because they're already very used to your pipelines being deployed automatically, this will fit right into their software development workflows. You will not need to train them on much. You will not need to ask them to change their workflows in a major way. This will fit right into their software development workflows. And what it will result in is a situation where you have, as I said before, application security built in and not bolted on. And importantly, when you're tracking the amount of time spent on new builds, that time will not be any more than what you're spending right now. The added benefit you'll have is that your new builds will be a lot more secure. I can fully understand that you may be skeptical about what I'm telling you right now. How can it be true that I do more security work alongside my software development work and I'm still staying on time? All right, but just think of the robotic vacuum cleaner example I gave you. The concept is exactly the same. And if you still don't believe me, don't take my word for it. Listen to Gartner, because we all trust Gartner, right? Now, we've been working with Gartner for just over a year now and helping them understand this space in a lot more detail, working with their analysts. In fact, a lot of their AppSec analysts are actually based out of Australia, so proximity helps. And this is what Gartner has to say. Gartner says that by 2026, those companies that have shifted left will be doing 10 times the number of security activities in total compared to those that are still following the traditional approach. But interestingly, those that have shifted left will spend only half the time in patching. Let me say it again so it can sink in for you. You do 10 times the number of security activities, but you spend only half the time in patching, right? And that's where a lot of your developer productivity comes from, because you're not rushing around like headless chickens. You're actually doing this in a sustainable and consistent way and in a structured way. It's like brushing your teeth. If you brush your teeth daily, you only have to go to the dentist once or twice a year. If you don't brush your teeth at all, you go to the dentist multiple times a year. Each visit means bigger bills for you, and each visit usually results in more pain, right? So there is good evidence behind this in your normal everyday lives and also from the smart people at the likes of Gartner. Pooja, let's put up our second quiz and understand, help people understand at what stage of their SDLC that they should be integrating security.
And okay, the options are only after the product is built and ready for launch, during the testing phase, from the very beginning of the project, the security is not a priority in SDLC. Okay. Yeah, I think our audience are very in sync with whatever we are mentioning over here from the very beginning of the project. Very nice.
Looks like our messaging is sinking in.
Yeah. It's strange though, I see no one actually opting for the first one.
Interesting.
Huh. Okay, we'll give a couple of more seconds. Good enough. So we have a clear understanding over here. So 72% of people are saying it's from the beginning of the project. So it's definitely shift left.
Beginning of the project. Great. Brilliant. We're on the same page. Okay. So remember the 5 fists that I showed you earlier, right? You had your WAF, you had that's your web application firewall, you had your static scanning, right? And which includes your SCA. And then you had 3 other things: your gray box web app security, which you might commonly have seen heard referred to as DAST scanning before. You have API security, and you have your cloud security posture management. Right? Our tool CyberChief covers 3 of those 5 fists for you. The reason we don't do the other 2 is because there are plenty of other tools out there that do the other 2, the web application firewalls and the static scanning, very well. And in fact, we use some of those tools ourselves as part of our SDLC, right? But what we have seen is that a lot of customers hesitate to build these 3 components into their SDLC because the traditional AppSec tools, the traditional brand name AppSec tools, have been somewhat hard to integrate into your software development workflows, right? Now, what is the big difference between a tool like CyberChief, which is built for software development teams, versus some of the other brand named legacy tools, which have been built for security experts and at times rebranded into tools for developers? Well, here's the difference. If you use a tool like CyberChief, it means less training for your team. It means exponentially less time spent on setup and integration. It means you have one support team to deal with any of your help needs, including any security coaching that your developers need. And it means that when you have a really good suggestion for a new feature, we'll listen to you and we'll actually build some of those in, especially if we can see that some of our other customers will benefit from what you're suggesting. So let me show you a bit more about what this tool does. So I've shown you some of the analytics that it can do, right? You have 3 very different modules. You have your web app scanning, which is your gray box scanning. There's no need to record anything. You simply put in your username and password and some XPaths or some CSS elements, and this tool will log into your application, scan behind the login, right? Gray box scanning. This Bolt API security module is the most interesting one that you probably have not heard of before. Now, API security is a growing phenomenon. A lot more people are talking about it. A lot more people are asking for it. And that is because more and more applications are relying on API endpoints, right? Both internal and public facing to send data and receive data from external systems. So what CyberChief's Bolt API security module does is it takes care of end-to-end application security for you. What I mean by this is it can integrate with your applications or your cloud environments, and it can collect data about your endpoints. It can get the endpoints ready for scanning by creating an open API spec automatically. It can scan your endpoints and tell your developers what vulnerabilities to fix without them having to lift a finger. Right? This whole process that I described to you happens end to end without them having to lift a finger. And the best part is When a vulnerability comes up, you have very detailed fixes, including code snippets, so that your developers spend less time searching Google and more time actually building your application and enhancing your application. Your Raider CSPM is another thing which is new to a lot of people that I speak to. And CSPM allows you to lock down your cloud environment to make sure that your IAM policies are set up properly, your encryption is done properly, your services are talking to each other in the most secure way possible. And if you have certifications, it will even tell you which of your compliance requirements you need to improve in order to keep your certification. For example, if you have ISO 27001, you can get a list of the, for example, in this case, 255 security controls that you need on your cloud environment, and you can get a sense of how many you currently have and how many more you might need to add. Right? This is just one amazing use of cloud security posture management. There's also container scanning and things like that coming very, very soon. Right? The key idea behind this tool is that when I go to run a scan, for example, right, instead of having to configure multiple plugins, tweak different settings, all I do is select from three different scan modes and let the tool do its work. Right? Your developers aren't security experts. You can't expect them to know what scan rules to run and what policies to miss out, to leave out. Because if you give them the option of leaving things out, they're always short of time. Critical things may get left out. And then what is the point of shifting left and building security into your SDLC? There's no point, right? And then again, you can run integrations into existing tools that you use. You can send your issues to Jira or to Azure DevOps or to GitLab or to GitHub. You can integrate with your Jenkins pipelines or Azure DevOps or GitLab's pipelines so that you can run scans from your pipeline. Another example of the fact that you don't need anyone to run a tool for you. You don't need anyone to click a button for you. The big burning questions that we hear around this is around number one, productivity. Right, so I think we've covered that in a lot of detail, and I just remind you about the robotic vacuum cleaner example and also the dentist example. All right, the next thing is around support, and this is an interesting one. So we heard from our customers that, look, it's fine. You provide these detailed fixes, and that's great, but our developers still have questions. They still go on Google. Right? Or they still harass our internal security team, right? Or they ask our CTO for help and he's not a security expert. So what can you do around that? And so what we came up with was on certain subscriptions of CyberChief, you actually get a capability called on-demand security coaching. What that means is whenever your devs have a question, instead of going on Google, instead of wasting the time of your internal security team, they simply ask one of our coaches for help, and our coaches can answer their questions for them in a chat box, or they can get on a Teams call or a Zoom call to help them answer their questions. This is the level of support and expertise that you're going to get if you invest in a tool like CyberChief. Now, I'm just conscious of time, so let me finish up with a couple of things. At the start of this webinar, I told you about the potential financial hole that you're digging for yourself if you keep going down the traditional AppSec route, right? Let me put those into some numbers for you, into some ROI calculations for you. If you take my advice and future-proof your AppSec by shifting left, you're potentially spending somewhere in the region of 25 lakhs to 35 lakhs a year. That includes your tools, that includes your support, that includes the odd BAPT here every 6 to 12 months. Compare that to your traditional AppSec approach, where you're hiring three or more security experts. Not only are they expensive, and not only are you dropping a bucket load of cash, but they're really hard to find, right? And if one leaves, let's say you get a couple, if one leaves, then the other one is immediately under a lot more pressure, and then he'll probably leave too. It's not a sustainable or scalable solution. And to put a different slant on this for you, I was speaking to a head of security from a very well-known company. You all would have heard of it. And he said to us, look, I've got roughly 11 to 1,200 API endpoints, and I have a team of 4 application security experts. And I asked him, okay, great. So with these 4 people, how many times a week or a month would you test each one of your API endpoints for security vulnerabilities? And he said, we only look at them maybe once a year. Right? So imagine that, right? Massive company, a reasonable sized security team, and they only look at their API endpoints once a year, despite spending that much money. So if the financial aspect, if the financial savings are not enough to help you shift left, let me put it to you another way. Our customers that are using the CyberChief Bolt module to secure their APIs, many of them have no in-house security people, and they are testing their API endpoints, sometimes over 2,000 or 3,000 endpoints every day. That is the opportunity that's in front of you. Which brings us to our final quiz, quiz number 3. What is your ROI? So, true or false, you can save up to 50 lakhs per year by simply automating your application API and cloud security. I will be shocked if anyone gets this wrong. But while you fill out that quiz question, let me finish by saying this. There's a lot more that I could have shown you, and I'm sure you have some questions, so please ask them once you've answered the quiz. Put them in the chat box, and I will go through each one of them for you. But before I take the first question, let me leave you with this thought. I came across a revelation, right? And it was this. Before our customers started using CyberChief, they told us that, we asked them, why do you want a tool? And they told us, look, we want to fix vulnerabilities really quickly as possible. They told us that they also want to shift left and, run more security within their existing dev teams. They wanted to cut patching time, and they wanted to do all the same things that you are here to do, that all of the same things that you have mentioned with your poll responses that you want to do. What surprised me was that a few weeks after using our solution, we asked them again, what is it that you really like about the solution now? And you know what they said? They said, look, yes, we're absolutely patching vulnerabilities faster, and we were definitely doing more with our dev teams. We love the integrations because no one has to lift a finger to run security. But the biggest difference for them was that they now had the freedom to make their own decisions. Right? They had the autonomy to do security work in a way that suited them and their developers' workflow. They really enjoyed the fact that security could now run in an automated way without feeling like they were being bullied by their customers, by their vendors, or other security experts or internal security teams. And if you think about this, it makes complete sense, right? The freedom that I'm talking about, the freedom that our clients enjoy by using a solution like this, by shifting left, is the same freedom that makes us want to keep working from home, isn't it? It's the same freedom that allows us to fit in important non-work life events during our workday, isn't it? So the question really for you is, When is the right time for you to grab your application security freedom? By shifting left, by exploring things that will make a real difference to you and your team's lives. I'll leave you with that thought. How do we go with the final question, Anirban?
I'm looking for the questions to come up.
Oh,
One thing from my side, Ayush, you can also highlight how easy it is to incorporate a tool like CyberChief in an infrastructure which is a bit more complex, a bit more aged. And is it something which would be having a downtime effect, or is it something which can be done without affecting anything, just a process which can just attach to them without making any kind of much changes in their current process?
Good question. Good question. Let me put it to you this way. With traditional security tools, you normally need someone sitting on a computer, running a scan. That scan will usually use their resources. Their computer becomes unusable. With CyberChief, it's completely different, right? Everything is run in the cloud. Even the scanning is done in the cloud, right? And the advantage of this is that let's say you have to do the manual way you have to click a button to run a scan, right? Once you click that button, it's not like you've got to hang around and see what the results are. The results will be emailed to you. You'll receive a Slack notification, and you can understand whether there are any vulnerabilities you need to fix, right? Let's say you don't even have a Jenkins or some sort of DevOps or CI/CD pipeline set up. Let's say you're doing manual commits to your production or non-production environments. You can still call our APIs. Your developers can still call our APIs from their Postman accounts to run scans, right? You don't even need to log into the tool. Everything that we've done with CyberChief is designed to make sure that security runs parallel to your software development, not as a roadblock to your development. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question, Anirban?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just that we just do it in a parallel side and it doesn't stop anything. It can
absolutely. Now, if you're a bit more advanced and you have, let's say, automated pipeline set up, you're using Jenkins or Azure DevOps or GitLab or whatever it might be, you have the ability to say, look, I'm going to refresh one of my environments with a new build. I'm going to run a CyberChief scan. And if it finds any high or medium risk issues, I'm going to stop my build. You can even go to that extent if you really want. It's completely flexible. It's completely up to you.
I see Mohan raising the hand. Maybe Mohan, I can unmute you. You can just have a talk. Yeah, you are unmuted, Mohan. You can just unmute yourself, Mohan, and you can just talk. Mohan, you can go ahead. Okay, you have just put that. Can you please share the recording link? Okay, yeah, definitely, Mohan. I'll do that. Yeah, that's all of you guys who have joined in will be getting a recording link for sure. Yep. Okay, one more thing, Ayush, from my side to ask you. So as this particular thing is an integral part of development, so is it good an idea to implement this tool in the planning stage itself, or it is something which the development process is rolled in? What is the right time to take this particular decision? Because I'm asking this question on the sense of, like, some projects are security are much more higher side than some other projects, because project to project my security landscape might change, right? So is it something as a good practice to actually implement this particular tool in the planning stage itself? Can that help, or it is always that after development is basically rolled in that I need to implement a tool like this?
It's a good question, Anirban. And it's one of those things where I go back to brushing your teeth, right? Once you get in the habit of brushing your teeth, you feel really strange on any given day where you don't brush your teeth in the morning, right? And shifting left, DevSecOps, all of these things are very similar. Where if you start doing it every day, then you build the habit, you build the culture, and it becomes a part of your processes. It becomes a part of your discussions. You discuss it during your sprint planning. You discuss it during your stand-up meetings, right? And that way, it just happens by default because that's what everyone expects to happen. If you pick and choose when you do security, then it becomes really hard to build that culture, and it gives people the option of maybe not doing it. Right? So it really is up to you. If you really want to shift left, then it needs to be included right from the planning stages of your products and your features, rather than being rather than picking and choosing which projects you want it for.
Good. Thanks for that. Ayush, one thing which I have got from some of the clients I have discussed on CyberChief, since CyberChief reduces a lot of dependency on the pen test, is it a possibility that we take the pen test totally off by implementing CyberChief?
Great question. Great question. I would love to say yes, and very soon maybe we'll get there. At the moment, the biggest value of manual VAPT is making sure that you're finding those workflow-related vulnerabilities, which are still quite hard to find for automated tools, right? Now, the workflow-related vulnerabilities, they usually require human logic to firstly understand the workflow, understand the business rules, and then it requires human logic to work out how those rules can be exploited or how loopholes can be found in those rules, right? So it is absolutely true that if you're doing, for example, quarterly VAPT, quarterly manual pen test, if you shift left, if you go towards DevSecOps, implement a tool like CyberChief, then you might be able to go from not do quarterly pen tests, but do maybe 6-monthly or annual pen tests, right? But it is still important to do at least some level of manual security testing because it does give you a lot of benefits that automation still cannot provide.
Good. So the frequency will be changed, but it cannot be eliminated as of.
Correct.
Great. Thanks for that. I have a question coming up from Shantini and Santosh. We'll take one by one. Maybe I'll take the question first, that will integrating security in the SDLC slow down the build process?
That's a good question. And I refer back to what I said about the robot, right? The robot vacuum. Because you're doing this in an automated way, and because you're doing this in parallel with your build process, with your deployment process, there is no need that your deployments are slowed down, right? Now, what will happen over time is that your developers will become really used to fixing the security issues which are found during a CyberChief security test, alongside any functional bugs that they're fixing, right? It's like any human habit. The more often we do it, the faster we become at it. And at the end of the day, as I showed you with the Gartner statistic, if you do this consistently in a scalable way, you're actually going to spend less time in patching. And so at the net at the end of the year, you'll be spending less time on security. So the question for you, Shantini, is no, it will not slow you down.
Thanks for that. Any other questions from you guys? You can even put it on the chat box. If we are not able to answer all of them in this particular things, we can actually just take them off and I can actually give you the answers. I can send you over there on your mail or something of that sort also. That's not a problem.
Just quickly, Anirban, Santosh has a very interesting question, right? Won't software teams become dependent on your support team after implementing your tool, right? And it's a very interesting question, which I just want to quickly clarify. When I talked about on-demand security coaching earlier, right? that is not a way for us to for you to become dependent on us. That is a way for you to eliminate the need to send your developers on expensive classroom-style security training courses, right? What happens? You send your devs away for 2 or 3 days to a classroom-style course. They learn about security in Java, how to code securely in Java or Python, whatever it may be. They come back, they might remember 10% of what they've learned, and they might implement 2% of what they've learned, right? So security coaching, you'll still spend all that money for 100%, but they're only implementing 2%. So our on-demand security coaching program is all about making sure that your devs get help when they need it to answer the questions that they have, rather than some general knowledge dump, which they'll forget most of anyway. I hope that makes sense, Santosh, and great question. I think Anirban, we're right on time.
Yes, yeah, on time, and maybe a couple of last questions, if we can take in. Maybe 1 or 2 will be also okay for us. Anyone else with any kind of questions? Okay, then. We can actually take those particular questions that you have offline as well. So we'll be sending you the recording link definitely, and we will be also sending you certain kind of details about what Cyber Chief is, some data points and things like that. So we can actually look into it in a bit more detail, and then you can actually connect to us for a kind of a pre-session where we can actually delve in your kind of a problem on a one-to-one basis. Maybe can set up a small demonstration kind of a meeting also for you guys, and we can take it from there. So thank you all. Thanks, Ayush, for giving the time, and let's hope that we can actually continue the journey on speaking more about the security consciousness and bring up a kind of a world which can make this particular software development more secure, more fast, and we can actually deliver better software in coming times. Thank you a lot. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thanks, Anirban. Thanks, team. Talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, all.